Hello! So, let's talk about the Rings of Power episode 5. Um, this week I have fewer issues than last week. I like this episode more. I still don't know if I liked it as much as episode 3, which is my favorite episode so far. Um, but I did enjoy it. I do have some problems with it though. Um, let's take this plotline by plotline. So, let's start with the plotline where I don't really have any issues, which are the Harfoots. The Harfoots continue to be the part of the story that I personally am most interested in. I enjoy pretty much every scene that happens with the Harfoots, and that is very much true in this episode as well. Maybe my only slight gripe is Poppy's song. And what I mean by this is Poppy's song is very nice, but it has an inexplicable reference to Aragorn's song from Fellowship of the Ring. Not all those who wander are lost. And that kind of took me out of it because it just kind of felt like a very artificial thing. Like there isn't any possible in-universe explanation for these two songs with very different contexts and very different origins to have like this connection between them. So that's like my one minor criticism of the Harfoot's plotline. Other than that, though, very fun. Pretty confident that the stranger is in fact Gandalf now. I don't know. It could still be like they could still surprise us with something, but I'm still currently going with Gandalf or maybe Radagast, but most likely Gandalf, I think. In part because he just kind of looks like Ian McKellen. I think I've mentioned this before. Like, they just kind of picked an actor who looks like he could just be a younger Gandalf from the movies. But yeah, everything there is cool. No real comments to give about the Harfoot storyline. Other than the fact that I was actually very wrong about where they were geographically. I guess I haven't been paying attention to the maps in the previous episodes with the Harfoots, because I've just kind of been assuming, because they're the hobbits, that they're probably somewhere in the region where the Shire is in the Third Age. But no, they're actually in Rhovanion, which is like Mirkwood and the dead marshes and stuff like that. So yeah, they're much further east than I thought they were. Doesn't really matter though. Either way, good storyline. A plus. Let's move on to the Southlands. So in the Southlands we have some unexpected developments. I have kind of been feeling that Bronwyn has been a bit too straightforward of like a heroic character. Like she's just kind of like she's just kind of good at everything she does. She can kill an orc. She always makes the right decision and so forth. And it just kind of felt, and so does Arondir. And it just kind of felt superfluous to have these two characters who are both like always on the same page, always right about everything, always good at everything, always succeeding at everything, surrounded by this like cast of kind of shitty humans who are just kind of bad at stuff and also terrible people. So I'm glad that we're finally getting some actual conflict between Bronwyn and Arondir, where Bronwyn is kind of leaning towards just submitting to the dark side. So that I find pretty interesting. I'm also surprised that the sword plotline was just kind of resolved. I mean, it wasn't resolved. It's still an important item in the story, but the part where it was a secret that Theo was keeping from everyone, I was expecting that to be like a multiple seasons long arc of him hiding it and it slowly corrupting him or whatever, but I guess that's not what they're going for, because he just gave it up. It's done. He no longer has it. Just like that. Not what I expected. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up back in his possession and he got back on the corruption arc that he seemed to be on for a while. But for right now, that seems to have been averted. The one thing that I find the most interesting about this storyline, though, is Adar, the leader of the orcs, who is an elf. And he has a really interesting reaction to the one human dude who, like, the elderly human who used to have the sword, who, like, comes to him and says, "We are here to serve Sauron." And Adar, like, gets pissed at that. I think that Adar very much does not serve Sauron. I think that Adar is trying to do something very much counter to what Sauron would want. If I had to guess based on how he treats the orcs, I would say that maybe Adar is trying to sort of build an orcish civilization. Like, he's trying to uplift the orcs, as it were, to sort of make them a force in their own right, rather than always being subservient to whichever Dark Lord comes along. Which would be an interesting storyline to pursue, I think. Sort of an orc independence movement that's still very much evil, because they're orcs, but that might actually be opposed to Sauron when he returns. So yeah, that could be interesting. Speaking of Sauron, though, in this episode we finally get Eminem. We finally get the person from all the trailers, well, from one of the trailers, who everyone joked looked like Eminem, and also everyone assumed was going to be Sauron. That's clearly not the case, because that's a woman, first of all. So I don't know, or actually it could still be the case. It's possible that Sauron is using a female body right now. That wouldn't be that unusual, I think, for a Maiar. I mean, it's not like any body of Sauron's is his real body. He doesn't have a physical body. He's a spirit. But just like Gandalf. But if that is Sauron, it's an interesting design that I'm not going to comment on yet until we see more of it. But right now I think that actually isn't Sauron. I think that's not Sauron. I think that's a new faction that we know nothing about. The Eminem person and the two other women with the Eminem person. Yeah, I think that's like a whole new group that we have not encountered before. Anyway, okay, so those are the storylines that I'm mostly pretty happy with right now. The other two storylines I have some issues with. So let's start with Elrond and Durin's storyline. My problem with this storyline is that it is that the show does not make it clear what the characters are talking about sometimes. I still don't understand what the elves mean to do with the Mithril. I do not understand if their plan was that if Elrond confirmed that the dwarves found the Mithril, they were going to go to war against Khazad-dûm, like assault it and steal all the mithril, or just ask to trade. I don't understand whether they're saying that the mithril needs to be utilized magically to sort of, on a mystical level, preserve the elves, which I think is what they're saying, or if they just mean we needed to make weapons and armor because the shadow is returning. I think they mean the more mystical thing, like they're going to do some crazy ritual with the mithril that's going to save the elves. This is all, like, I'm 99% sure, by the way, that mithril does not have any, like, super mystical properties in Tolkien lore. So whatever this is, I think they're just making it up, which I don't mind. I just wish it was better explained, because from this episode, I still don't understand why the elves exactly want the mithril. I have some, like, a vague impression, but it was way too, like, way too hocus pocus for my tastes. Way too vague. Which, I mean, I guess that's par for the course for Tolkien. Like, Tolkien has a super soft magic system, so kind of works, I guess. So that's one thing that's unclear to me. The other thing that's unclear to me is, what exactly does Gil-galad want Elrond to do? Because I don't think there's any reasonable doubt left that the dwarves have the mithril. Like, if you walk up to Elrond and you're like, hey, do the dwarves have the mithril? We need it. And Elrond is like, oh, I made a promise to Durin that I wouldn't tell you about that. Like you just told him. Like that answer translates directly to the dwarves have the mithril. Like, if the answer is no, what the hell did you swear to Durin to not say? That they don't have this thing? Like, I don't know. It just felt super weird that Gil-galad didn't simply just nod and say, ah, okay, I see. You're saying that they have it. We shall now proceed as though you had simply said yes. Because you did in fact say yes, just with more words. But apparently that wasn't enough of a confirmation for Gil-galad. I don't know. It was a weird... Like, I just didn't buy that Elrond actually kept the secret when he clearly just straight up told them by not telling them. So that also I did not like. The one thing I did really like about this particular plotline in this episode, though, is the whole thing with the table. The revelation, like, when the table conversation originally happened, I actually wrote down in my notes that I didn't like it because I was like, this feels weird. This came out of nowhere. This is a weird, like, are we implying that the elves robbed a dwarven tomb and are eating dinner off a grave? But then, of course, it turns out that it's not supposed to make sense because it's just Durin really obviously bullshitting the elves to bully them because he's an asshole. And I like that reveal. That got a good chuckle out of me. Which this show isn't generally very funny, but that was probably the best joke in the entire show so far, as I'm concerned. The reveal of the table story being fake. And that just leaves us with Numenor. And Numenor is interesting. I find the storyline in Numenor interesting, and I want to see where it goes, and I don't have any gripes with the storyline, but I do have some gripes with a couple of characters. I feel like we have some I feel like I feel like I might have missed an entire episode. I mean, I haven't, but it feels like I have, because pretty much every Numenorian character has completely baffling motivations to me that feel like I'm supposed to already understand them, but I just don't. It feels like in this episode, Isildur's sister being super opposed to the expedition just came out of nowhere. That was, as far as I noticed, that was not an established thing about her character, and after this episode, I still don't understand why she's opposed to it, when her entire family is in favor. I don't think that's been established at all. And then Pharazôn says to his son / her boyfriend, oh, this is all part of my plan. We want this expedition to go forward because if it does, we'll get, like, I'm gonna, like, leverage this to, like, get a lot of wealth for Numenor and basically colonize Middle-earth. Which I was like, oh, cool, that's, like, a really interesting plot point. I can do some, like, fun political analysis of what's going on there. And I will, once we get to later episodes where that's explored more, presumably. But then his son tries to sabotage the expedition, and it feels like I can't tell if he did that on Pharazôn's orders, or if he did that of his own volition. If he did it on Pharazôn's orders, then I'm completely confused, because we literally just established that Pharazôn wants the expedition to go forward. In fact, it's, like, key to this grand plan he has, so why would he want to sabotage it? And if the son did it on his own, then I have no idea why he did that, because he seemed to agree with Pharazôn. Like, when Pharazôn presented his grand plan, his son was like, oh, yes, this is excellent scheme, father. Ooh, I didn't think of that. And then he goes and tries to blow up the ships? I don't know. I feel like we're supposed to understand these characters' motivations a bit better than we do at this point. But none of this is quite as egregious, in my opinion, as Isildur himself. Because Isildur, I still don't quite get his motivations. It's clear he has some kind of internal conflict. Like, he is torn between doing what is right according to the laws of Numenor and, like, serving his country on the one hand, and then on the other hand, this other something that he wants. But it's not clear what that other thing is. Like, there's been mention of going west, maybe to Valinor, but that hasn't been explained. It hasn't been explained why these things are mutually exclusive. It hasn't been explained why I'm still not entirely clear on whether he sabotaged his Seaguard application on purpose or not. Like, every character seems to act like he did that on purpose, including him. Like, Isildur himself basically acts like he did that on purpose. Like, he tells his friends, oh, I thought he would only discharge me and not all of you. Like, I wouldn't have done this if I'd known it would affect you. But I rewatched that scene in the previous episode, and it really doesn't feel like a thing he did on purpose. Like, it feels like he just got distracted by the whispers in his brain, and that's why it happened. Like, that's why he let go of the rope. I don't know. I feel like something is just off about the way characters are being written in the Numenor storyline, in that I cannot follow what anyone's motivations are. Like, Galadriel and Halbrand, yes, excellent. Queen Miriel makes sense. Elendil also makes sense. Those four make sense. But Elendil's children and Pharazôn and his son, I am constantly baffled by. And it feels like they just do whatever the plot requires them to do without making any actual sense as to why they're doing it. I don't think that's what's going on. I think that what's going on here is that they forgot to give some important scenes got cut that explain these characters. I feel like there should have been a couple more scenes with Isildur and his sister that would sort of cement their motivations. And maybe a couple of scenes with Pharazôn's son that would cement his motivations. And that those scenes might have gotten cut for time, and I don't know. I feel like the pacing of the Numenor storyline is off. It's way too fast. The Numenor storyline is just moving at a breakneck pace, and it's impossible for me to keep track of what's going on sometimes. There's too many characters for how little screen time the Numenor storyline has gotten so far. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about it. Like, the things that are happening are cool and I like them, but it's not sufficiently justified why they're happening sometimes. So I don't know how to feel about it. Yeah, those are my thoughts about this episode. Oh yeah, one final thought actually. The armor that the Númenórean soldiers are all wearing on the ship in the final scene of the episode where they head out towards Middle-earth, the armor looks cool, and the helmets look cool, but they look awful together. They're completely mismatched. Those helmets do not go with that armor. I don't know what the costume department was thinking. It looks horrible. Both of the pieces are very finely made and designed. They're just completely mismatched with each other. They cannot be worn at the same time. Terrible decision. Paint those helmets white or make the armor match the helmets. You cannot just have metallic helmets and then whitewashed armor. It looks bad. Just looks bad. Yeah, that's my little costume design gripe for this episode. But yeah, I am going to see you next week for episode 6. This week's episode I liked better than episode 4, which is my least favorite episode still, but not as much as episode 3, which is my favorite episode. So let's hope we get more episodes 3s in the future, and fewer episode 4s, and also fewer of whatever this was, this in-between state that we had with this one. Yeah. See you next week for episode 6, and then we've only got, I think, 2 episodes left after that. This season is now in its second half, so curious to see how they wrap it up. Bye!